The most dangerous thing you've done with fire.
You go to heaven, and the first question you're going to ask God is, how many hamburgers?
Where is Jesus' body?
And yeah, the way it all ties together, the way that we could so seamlessly go to like Exodus, right, and still kind of be on the same topic is so cool. Got my coffee. I got my friend.
I got lukewarm coffee.
Cool. Oh, it's already lukewarm?
It is pretty lukewarm.
Oh, man, that's sad. And I got some cool stuff I want to talk to you about.
Yes, I'm excited.
Cool.
Before that, let's kick it off with a little game. This game is called Human Lie Detector.
Okay.
How this works is I'm going to give you a prompt.
Yeah.
And you will then have to tell me a story based on the prompt.
Okay.
We'll keep it to like a short little story.
Sure.
And then I'll have to decide whether your story is true or fake. So if I ask you the prompt and you have nothing really good comes to mind, you just make something up.
Right.
I have to decide if it's true or false.
Okay.
And then we'll switch. I have a topic.
Your plan is to do this with middle schoolers?
Yes.
See
yeah.
how
Tomorrow,
that's
our game is playing this game with middle schools. So
we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
My question for you.
Yeah.
The most dangerous thing you've done with fire.
Ooh, with fire?
Most dangerous thing you've done with fire.
I don't remember what it's called, but I did that thing where like you walk across the hot coals.
Walking across hot coals?
Yeah.
You did that?
Yeah.
That's your story?
I mean, there's not much to it. What's the most dangerous thing I did with fire? That's what I did. There were flaming coals, and I did the barefoot walk across.
Oh, okay. You want to hear my story? This
Are
is
you
way more fun.
Are you not going to guess if mine's
that's true.
real or fake?
That's true. I'm guessing you actually did it.
No, I didn't do it.
Oh, that's lame. Okay, my most dangerous thing I've done with fire is, you know how you can like burn steel wool? You ever done that?
No.
Okay, well, steel wool's kind of flammable.
Okay.
So if you put it in, man, I shouldn't go into too many details
I know.
here. But if you put it kind of, I would get like a whisk and you just shove it in there and you light it on fire and then you put it on like a long string and you spin the string. It like burns and glows, and that's how you get those photos you've ever seen of like someone standing and like there's like a fire ring above them.
If this is a lie, I'm going to be upset because this sounds cool.
It's so cool. So when I was first getting into photography, me and my friends would do this because it's like fire and photos, the coolest thing ever. And so you do it like, sometimes I do it like on a lake. And so there's no real fire danger. And then you get like the cool reflections of the fire like bouncing off the lake.
Oh, man.
Looks insane.
Yeah.
If this is real, I'll show you a photo of it afterwards.
Okay.
I'm really bad at playing this game. So I was doing it once up in a place outdoors and was doing it on the road and spinning it. And obviously as you spin it, you know, it's like you're giving it oxygen. So it's catching on fire, it's lighting. And then you get like centrifugal force. So little chunks of it are like flying off and sparks are going everywhere. And that's what makes it look cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was safe because it was on a road, but I got it going a little too fast. And so this large chunk flies off and just goes like straight into a dead bush. And the thing just like ignites. Like
if this isn't a true story, you're really good at this game.
So I'm like swinging it and it lights and this whole bush is like on fire. And it's in the middle of
the burning bush.
It is in the middle of a outdoor recreational area in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
So it's like if this fire got out of hand, it'd be very, very bad.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy like jumped on it and put it all out and we were good. But that was the most dangerous thing I've ever done with fire.
I think that's true.
I can either confirm or deny. but it is true. I'll show you the photo after this.
Okay.
All right. Next one.
Mm-hmm.
An injury you got while doing something dumb.
The interesting thing is like, do I tell you a true story and make it sound like I'm making it up?
Or
can I do that even?
I mean, it's kind of like two truths and a lie. So maybe you start with
and then embellish it a little.
Yeah, exactly.
You're teaching me how to be evil. When I was a little bit younger, we would go dirt biking and quadding and stuff. And I decided one day to just jump on and go by myself and hit as many jumps as I could because I was pretty decent. And when I went off one of the jumps and landed, right as I landed, I don't remember what kind of bird it was, but it was a big bird, like a condor or a hawk or something. We're out in the desert, by the way. And as I landed, it comes and it smacks me right in the shoulder and I break my collarbone.
Dang.
Yeah.
I'm going to say true.
Because I have broken my collarbone.
And this story sounds vaguely familiar. Is it true?
No.
Ah, come on. What part's fake?
The bird part.
Oh, okay. You just ate it.
I actually have no memory of what happened. Yes, I think I bounced off. The bike was fine.
This is my steel wool photo.
Oh, that's super cool.
Isn't it fun? So normally it's like a complete circle.
Okay. But we're still learning how to use your camera.
Yeah.
You're going to show the audience?
Yeah, I'll put it up. This is just, this is kind of what it was.
Okay. That's cool.
That was one of the first attempts. I can't find any of the cooler photos, but.
So you never actually made the full circle?
I don't have the photo in my Google Photos. I'm sorry. All right, is it my turn to answer this question? And then we'll actually get into the good stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Energy I got while doing something dumb. I was trying to impress a girl when I was in middle school, and I made kind of like a tightrope, but it was like 6 or 7 feet up in the tree. I made it like a tightrope, and then I was like, I knew I couldn't walk a tightrope, so I put a string above so I could hold on to it.
Okay.
So I'm like holding on to the string above, walking on the tightrope, and then I had a harness, and so I was like clipped in to the rope on top. And so
so it's like a ropes course when you go to camp or something.
Exactly.
But you made it?
Homemade,
oh,
DIY.
Wow.
And I've been climbing trees for a while, so I did this, and yada yada yada. Top rope snaps, my harness goes down. I can't tightrope, so I just kind of ate it and broke my arm.
Didn't you start this off with like there was a girl there?
Yeah, I was trying to impress her.
Oh, I see.
So I was trying to. This was the full plan.
Okay.
This is in my front yard. I wanted like her to. She was coming over to like do something because we were family friends.
Yeah.
So I was trying to impress her, and so I wanted to be like in the tree when she pulled up.
Was this in the front yard?
It was in the front yard.
Oh,
but
wow.
I ate it and had to go to the hospital before she got there. True or false?
Oh, that's brutal. I mean that feels true.
Yes, it is true.
Okay. You told the truth twice and I lied twice. What does that say about us?
Wow. All right.
No.
Well, with that to the Bible, because apparently we need some of that.
Well, apparently I do.
Apparently. I'm good.
Cool. So what I wanted to talk about is actually something I have only just recently started to think about this heavily. And it's, when I was going to school and stuff, we would always talk about like the person of God. And what I mean by that is like the moments where God is actually physically there. In the Old Testament. And we always had this one classmate who'd be like, oh yeah, it's pre-incarnate Christ. Like, of course. And he would always say it so nonchalantly. And I always had like issue with that because it's pre-incarnate, sure, adds like the additional element, but Jesus was a very specific figure in the Bible, right? He came down. We are all created in the image of God, and we are humans. Jesus came down as human. He was fully God and fully human, but he came down as part of his creation. He came down in his own image, right? And so when we read about God in the Old Testament, like I feel like we have to make a distinction there. We have to realize, and I think that's what's hard for people, is we have a physical God that we worship in the person of Jesus, but we see God in physical form all throughout the Old Testament, right? In creation, he's there in the garden with them.
Yep.
Later on, you brought it up earlier, right? We have the covenant ceremony with Abraham, although in that moment, he's physical, but he's in the form of like a lantern or something, right?
I think so.
And like, obviously we have moments like the burning bush where that's a physical object, but that's more like the spirit and glory of God. I'm talking more about like, there's a moment when God's on his way to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He approaches Abraham's tent. Abraham's outside working, and there's 3 guys that approach his tent. And as these 3 guys approach, Abraham recognizes that as Yahweh, as the God that he worships. And they're physical dudes. And in that moment, it's trippy because there's 3 of them, right? So it's like almost an indication of the Trinity of God. But in this moment, there's a physical person or people present, and it's recognized as God. Then later we see the story of him with a guy named Melchizedek. And what's significant about Melchizedek is he's a He's a king and prophet, right? And so, like, that's significant because the king and prophet were always separate people in Scripture. So that's meant to be seen as a godlike figure. He's not named God, but he's a physical aspect that we're supposed to see as God. The reason that this has been so prevalent for me is with Anthem, we just went through Exodus. We just finished it a couple weeks ago. And one verse that caught my eye was Exodus 33:11, where it says that in those days, Moses and God spoke face to face like a man and his friend. So just like you and I are sitting here recording this podcast, Moses got to speak to God. And I find that so significant, especially because it mentions face to face.
Yeah.
And we see like this physical aspect of God that, like, the mystery of it in my mind is like, does God come down in those moments not in full glory? Does he have the ability, which, I mean, he's God, he can do whatever he wants.
Sure.
But we see, later Moses on Mount Sinai with God, and he says, show me yourself.
Wait, where is that in the Bible?
Which part?
Mount Sinai. I can look it up as well, but
okay. It's the moment where Moses, he's like getting the commandments. I think it's right before the golden calf. I could be wrong.
Sorry, continue.
Some moment, you look it up. It's a moment where Moses is on Mount Sinai.
It's right up. It's Exodus 33. So 33 verse 11 is thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks with a friend.
Right.
Yada yada yada. And verse 18, Moses says, "Please show me your glory."
Yeah.
He said, "I'll make my goodness pass before you and proclaim before you my name, the Lord."
Yeah. It's this super intense moment where Moses can't look. He can only see, it says, doesn't it say God's like covering?
Yeah.
He puts him in the crevice of the mountain and he covers it with his hand as his full glory passes by. But like 7 verses before that, they're able to talk face to face.
Well, okay, this is what's interesting. Verse 20 says, and God said, "You cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live."
Right.
That's verse 20.
Right.
Verse 11, what's interesting is that it actually says, "Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face."
Right. So at some point.
Past tense.
Yeah.
So when did that transition happen?
I don't know.
Is that when...
That's the last moment that I can recall anything like that happening, right? Like we have multiple interactions with Abraham. We have the Garden of Eden where he walks with Adam and Eve, like very plainly. And then we have this moment where and this is post the burning bush, right? Yeah. God appears to him in a form that's physical, but it's not a physically human form. And then we see God used to speak to Moses face to face, implying just like this, right? Like there was a physical aspect to God. And like, it talks about moments like in the tabernacle where God's presence is there. And it's very, I think, implicative that, like, I think 33:11, where it says God used to speak to Moses face to face, I think in large part is talking about the tabernacle, where he would, he'd go through all like the sacrifices and the different steps he needed to in order to go to the Holy of Holies. And then it talks about, I think after chapter 33, where God would meet him in the tabernacle and the people would see a pillar of fire or a pillar of smoke descend upon the tent. And like in those moments, I think that's where it's like God actually enters the tent and there's some physical form that Moses is able to speak to face. But at some point that stops. And at some point, like I kind of have always been under the impression that God didn't always come down in his full glory. But then on Mount Sinai, it's such a big momentous occasion.
It was like all that he has.
It's fully all of God came down out of heaven because Moses was like, "Can you show me your glory? Like, I want to see you." And God's like, No. What you're seeing now is all you can handle.
That's weird to me, though, that God is somehow separating himself from himself. Like he's like splitting himself off.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
which is then weird because then you go to Philippians and Jesus emptied himself of his godlike status.
Right. And I mean, if we understand God as triune, I think, I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was, the picture was painted for me, for some video or something where it's like, imagine we live on a 2D plane and there's a 3D object interacting with that plane in different ways.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can see different.
This is one of angles. My best definitions of the Trinity.
Right.
I think this was a Bible Project video. It's
okay.
Exactly
Yeah. It might have been.
Yeah.
Or it was a podcast, or I don't remember. But yeah, and the way that the 2D plane would see the 3D object would be like insane. They wouldn't understand it. There might be aspects that they understand, but they're understanding a 3D object in their 2D existence. And so for us, we live in the 3D existence, but we're interacting with a 4D being. So in many ways, we're not going to be able to understand it. We don't understand fully why God is one God in 3 parts, but we also like don't need to fully understand it to understand that like that's how he exists and that's how we worship him.
Yeah.
And in large, that concept of God being triune came in the person of Jesus. I don't think Israel understood God as triune. I think Israel understood God as just God. And what's interesting is we see in the Old Testament God come down in different forms. We see him come down in somewhat of a physical form in multiple spots. We see him come down in the form of fire, and that's, I think, the most prominent. When he's not physical, he comes down in the form of fire. And I wonder a lot if it was actually fire or if that's just how they knew how to explain what they were seeing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
Right? Like if it's just this pillar of light,
it's like the only way they could explain it was it seems like a pillar of fire.
Right. They're like, yeah.
Okay, so I looked up this word going back to verse 11.
Yeah.
This, when it says that God and Moses spoke face to face, the definition of this phrase in Hebrew, I'm not going to try to pronounce it in Hebrew, but it means an intimate.
No, make an attempt.
Panim el panim.
Okay. Panera bread. No.
It means intimate and direct communication.
Yeah.
What's interesting here is it has a little line. It does not necessarily literally mean face to face. Which is then interesting.
Yeah, that almost adds an extra element.
It does.
Because how do they have direct and intimate conversation?
Yeah.
Right? Like Moses enters the tent, the presence of God comes down, the Israelites see a pillar of smoke, and we're told that Moses and God had intimate, direct conversations.
Yeah. Which is like
how could it not be face to face?
Yeah, I don't know.
We know from other parts of the Old Testament that there were physical, like God would come in physical form. And I think it's important to make the distinction between that and like in Jesus, because Jesus came down and was born and was fully human, lived a fully human life in the person of, more accurately, Yeshua.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that is also an important distinction because of what his name meant.
Which it meant?
The name Yeshua meant God saves. So his name meant God saves. And so the person of Yeshua came, his name meant God saves, and God saved humanity in the human that was himself, Jesus. And we are made in God's image, and we are fully human. Jesus came down, was fully human, and was essentially made in his own image. And so, and there's the aspect of image as well. I feel like there's always this broad context of like when you talk about being image bearers, we're talking about reflecting God to the people around us, which absolutely, right? Like we are image bearers, but we're also made in God's image, right? And if you take a photograph of someone, that no longer is that person. but it is an image of them.
Right.
But when you look at that image, you see the person.
It looks just like them.
It looks just like them. Yeah. It's not them, but it is something that you can tell what they look like. I think
that's interesting too, because like an image of like if I were to take a photo of you smiling, I'm capturing a side of your personality.
Right.
And that side, or that you smiling lives, I was going to say, lives longer than you actually smiling. Like you might go on and you might have different emotions and different phases, and like you as a being continues to develop and evolve. But this photo is just like it's a snapshot, a picture in time of you a year ago
being joyful,
with one emotion.
Yeah. So that also brings up a super interesting point. Is there's moments, mostly in the Old Testament, where characteristics of God are described as interacting with people. The spirit of joy, or the spirit of, I'm drawing a blank, but I'm sure that's also a pretty easy like Google search. But there's different moments in Scripture where God comes down as one of his characteristics. And it's almost like what you were just saying, right? Like the photograph, if you took a picture of me being joyful, like a candid photo, that's one aspect of me that the person of me is so much more than, but that is an aspect.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think Jesus, if we go back also to that like 4-dimensional interacting with the 3-dimensional, it's one aspect of the God we understand to be triune. And he comes down, and instead of just being, he is born. And you said in Philippians, he steps down from his glory and becomes fully human. And we know he's still fully God. And like the whole idea of an image is, I think there exists I need to really choose my words carefully, and maybe you can help me kind of change if need be. There is an aspect to God we see throughout Scripture before the person of Jesus that we see a human-like figure. We see God in the form of a human-like figure. And we are made in his image. So I don't know. I feel like whenever we think of what God might look like, we either think of the person of Jesus, which is a very specific aspect of God, or we think of like the Spirit of God, right? Or we think of these insane moments like in Jeremiah where he comes down on his throne and the throne is made, like the wheels are insane eyeball looking like angels, and like God's face is fully covered. And like there's moments like that where it's like he's seeing an insane looking thing that he can't describe, but he says it like he knows it's God. He sees some sort of figure in that moment sitting on its throne. It's really large. I think he says it incorporates like the entire sky, but he sees a person sitting on the throne. He just can't see the face.
Yeah.
And that also is interesting because when God approaches Moses on Mount Sinai, he says, like, any man, how did you read it? Any man who sees my face will not be able to live.
I think so. I moved somewhere else.
And so, like, I think there's an aspect to God that we tend to overlook because we feel like it's lowering him. When in reality, I think God elevated us as humans way more than we tend to like to think about.
Yeah, I would agree.
He made us in his image. We look physically, I think, a lot like God.
Yeah, I would agree.
And now when we go to heaven,
appearance.
What?
I was gonna, if God had a physical appearance.
Well, now he does in the person of Jesus.
Yes.
Right? When we go to heaven, we will see a human.
Okay, can I dig us deep down this rabbit hole?
Yes. Take us further.
Well, okay. I have a lot of other thoughts to pick back up on.
Sure.
I'm just going to leave this here. Where is Jesus' body? Like right now, because we're going to see his physical body in heaven when we get there. His physical body,
because he's there.
But does heaven have physical space?
Well,
because
Jesus' living
body isn't here.
Right.
It went up into the sky. Where did it go?
Because he came back to life. He was resurrected.
Yeah.
And in that moment, like
Spoiler.
the term, yeah, I know, right? because we've been so heavily Old Testament focused. When it talks about Jesus being resurrected, that's not like his spirit came out of his body. It says there was an empty tomb, right?
Yes.
So physically, the body that Jesus was in that died,
physically came back to life.
Physically came back to life.
The life
and so
re-entered into his body.
Right. And so, like, he wasn't animating that body. Like, he was fully back in his humanhood person.
100%.
And we see then later he goes up to heaven.
But now, like, where did that body go? Like, where did his body go to?
But Revelations also talks about us. And Revelations is his own rabbit hole.
Yes, it is.
But from what I understand about Revelations, I actually have not dived.
I like Dovin.
I have not dove enough into Revelation to say this, like,
Yeah, with any measure of confidence.
Well, some confidence, but not, I mean, people smarter than me will also debate every aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it says that the dead will rise. That we know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then those who knew God will receive new bodies. And like you probably have to look at the terminology, but will receive transformed bodies.
Mm-hmm.
They will be rejuvenated. And just like Jesus came back from the dead and went to heaven and was given new form or rejuvenated or transformed form, our bodies, no matter what happens to them after we die, we don't exist in spirit form. We are given transformed bodies. And I think it's our original bodies. They're transformed. I think, it talks about when Jesus goes and approaches his disciples, like he still has the holes.
Yeah, he still has the marks of his
death.
Yeah, of his earthly life.
I would imagine that, like, the act of being crucified is really brutal, and like they tore basically the skin off of his back. Yeah. I don't think his back is still skinless. I wonder, in the transformed person of Jesus, like maybe he won't still have the holes, like in his wrists and stuff, but there was an aspect before he went to heaven where like that's what was there.
Yeah.
And so when the end of time comes and we come back to life in our physical bodies, like I'll still have my tattoos. I don't know if I'll keep them, right? When we go up to be with God and we get to go to new earth that God creates for us. Like I'll have a transformed body, and if he decides that I didn't decorate my last home well enough, he'll give me a new one.
Didn't do a good job taking care of his tabernacle. Okay, I have a couple thoughts to chime in here.
Yeah.
First one that's been coming to mind a lot. Last night with my group of boys, we've been going through 1 Corinthians.
Love it.
And we spent a while talking about chapter 13, actually where it says, this is verse 12. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But when we see everything with perfect clarity, all I know now is that impartial and incomplete. But then I will know everything completely, just as God knows me completely. That's a weird translation. But anyway, just this idea that like now on earth.
The way that Paul talks, he's very like.
So weird.
He'll start a thought and he'll step back and reiterate something and then he'll go right back.
To like a grammar class. Would have made my life so much easier. But just the idea, like right now, I think this whole conversation is looking in that like dimly lit. Rusty mirror.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make out what these forms and shapes mean.
Right.
And then one day we will be able to see everything with like perfect 2020 vision, which I'm so excited for.
Yeah. And I have always made this joke. I hope when we get to heaven that we just get to watch.
Oh, me too.
Like everything play out from the beginning.
Me too.
I want to watch the nothing turn into water, turn into life, turn into the earth, turn into space. Like
I want to watch it like I'm watching like the Star Wars movie. Like I want to sit down and just watch like the entire world history just play out.
Yeah.
I think that'd be so fascinating.
I know.
I would love that. And then to be able to like go back in and like zoom in on a timeline and like see what this person was thinking or their thought process.
Yeah. Well, and like theoretically, as we're watching that, like we're with those people. So we're like,
bro, what was going through your mind?
Hey, Abraham, like what was it like to see God in like 3 separate people? Did you recognize, like that would be one of my first questions. It's like, like, hey, what was it like to see God before?
Yeah, okay. You get to heaven. What's the first thing you're going to ask God?
Oh, man. the first thing I would ask God in heaven is, did I do everything you had laid out for me? I went a different direction, I think, than you were thinking, but like, be something along those lines.
Yeah,
of like, did I live up to everything that you had for me?
Huh. See, my mind, I'm sorry. My mind goes something totally different. I'm like, I want to know how many hamburgers I ate in my entire life. Like, how many hamburgers, how many times did I go to In-N-Out in my entire lifetime?
You go to heaven, and the first question you're going to ask God is, how many hamburgers?
I got all of eternity to keep asking my other questions.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have endless questions, I'm sure. Or we'll just know. Maybe that's one of those things that, like, when we're in heaven with God, you're just like, whoa, I had 300 hamburgers.
Oh, I probably had more than that last year.
I just threw out a number. I don't know. Last year?
Well,
Jake,
okay, does double
there's 365 days in a year.
Yeah.
You're telling me you had a burger almost every day last year? Or within the last year? What a tangent.
Pretty close, actually. There's days where I have 2.
Okay.
And if a double counts as 2, then we're really getting somewhere.
Oh, are we talking about patties? No, I don't think patties. I think it's the full.
I probably had 200 last year, in all fairness.
Is this tell me if this is a bad description of the Trinity of God. When you have one burger, but different parts of that burger.
Okay, the best.
You have the meat patty, the lettuce, the cheese, the
That's
buns.
not bad. My favorite explanation of the Trinity, I actually used this. This came from a middle school student. A middle school student told me this once in small group, and I love it so much. I've used it in a lesson when I'm talking about the Trinity. One of my students, little 6th grader, says that the Trinity is like body wash. It's like the 3-in-1 body wash where you can wash your hair, your body, and your face. Like shampoo, conditioner, and body wash all in one container.
Oh, like, interesting. I love
that picture.
Yeah.
You have 3
But when you take it out of the
things.
bottle, it's one thing, but it's 3 separate like functions.
Exactly. 3 very separate things with separate functions all functioning as one thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. I love it, actually. It's so good. Okay, so
does the bottle itself play a part in that?
The bottle's just the bottle. That's the physical body. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So I went and I'm looking up all of the ways that God shares himself with
humanity,
basically. There's a couple. There's God sharing his glory, which we already talked about in Exodus. You have
with Moses on the mountain.
Moses on the mountain.
You can't look at that because you'll die.
Exactly. Right. And then you get all the references of the glory of the Lord filling the tabernacle.
Right.
So it's God's glory. We already talked about the angel of the Lord.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at with like when we see like the spirit of joy, the spirit of wisdom, or different characteristics. I think the angel of the Lord, a lot of people will say, oh no, that's pre-incarnate Christ.
Yes.
I think, no, that's an aspect. That's a characteristic. But we also know angel in its original meaning just meant messenger.
Mm-hmm.
But that messenger of the Lord, whenever he spoke from the perspective of Yahweh.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to differentiate. Like, was that God or was that a messenger? Like, okay, what else? You look like you have a list in front of you.
One of the things that just popped up said in Judges, when Gideon sees the angel, he freaks out and says, "Oh, Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." Just the same phraseology there. Of
the face to face. Yeah.
But it's with the angel of the Lord, not with Yahweh God himself.
Right, but he reacts and speaks to that angel as if it's Yahweh.
Yes.
And so there is this like, there's also this aspect of like, and maybe that's what like the figures were, right? Like when Moses speaks to God face to face, or when the 3 people come to Abraham and he recognizes that as Yahweh.
Yeah.
Maybe it is this messenger, this angel of the Lord that has a human-like form, but then is almost the doorway to heaven that God speaks through.
Interesting.
Like a speaker, right?
Yeah.
Like our modern day concept of microphone and speaker.
Yeah.
But God gave a speaker legs and sent it out.
Yeah, and it's then fulfilling, speaking on behalf of God, speaking through it. Yeah.
Or God speaking through the angel of the Lord.
Well, this ties in really well to the next one, which is God's spirit filling different people.
Right. And the first time we see that, I believe, is in Judges also.
Oh, I know it's in Exodus. It is. What's his name? Shoot, this is going to bother me. Mm-hmm. Spirit of the Lord fills the guy who's in charge of making the temple.
You're right. Right before. So that's an interesting thing. I was actually even talking to
what's his name? What's his name?
I don't remember. It's like a really convoluted one. The builder. Look up the tabernacle builder. But yeah, that's a really interesting point in and of itself, because he's mentioned right before the golden calf.
Bezalel.
Bezazel.
Bezalel. However you want to pronounce that.
Sure. Whatever. Bez. We'll call him Bez.
Bez. Here.
So super. We're doing tangent again.
I know.
But Bez is mentioned as being filled with the Spirit of God. And then the very next passage, right? He's filled with the Spirit of God in order to build the tabernacle and build the things for and of God. The very next chapter, after we're introduced to Bez, is the idol.
Right.
The golden Bezalel.
Okay. Thank you, Google.
Oh, man.
The very next thing that happens is...
I'm so glad you're tech savvy. Yeah. The very next thing after we're introduced to a man who's filled with the Spirit of God is the building, and he's not mentioned for that process. It's mostly Aaron, but right after we're introduced to a man filled with the Spirit of God for the purpose of building, mm-hmm. we see the creation of an idol, a golden calf. And people will also debate the meaning of the golden calf.
Sure.
Personally, I think I learned in school, or one of the things we talked about in school was the golden calf was the only way that they knew how to worship a god at that point.
Right. They needed that physical representation.
Moses went up the mountain and didn't come down, and they were like, well, what do we do? Like, we want to worship this amazing God who pulled us out of Egypt.
Right. They're trying their best.
How do we? Right. Yeah. And they have a guy there who's filled with the Spirit of God who knows how to build the tabernacle and who eventually does. But at that point, they're like, okay, well, hey, this is how we did it in Egypt. Mm-hmm. Moses hasn't come down yet. So let's just build something. And it's really interesting too, the language, depending on what version you read, Aaron either, after they create it, he either says, these are your gods, O mm-hmm. Israel, that brought you out of Egypt, or this is the God.
Oh, Israel. Interesting. That's fascinating.
Because the other thing too, man, so many rabbit holes. When we say the word God, we think capital G,
yes,
this
there's
is
one.
Yahweh.
Yeah.
Right. In reality, that word in Hebrew is Elohim. Mm-hmm. It's lowercase g. Mm-hmm. And they would always actually shorten it as El. They wouldn't finish it. And that's when they're referring to God. And in that moment, it's not clear. But, even if we use the full word translation, Aaron says, this is your Elohim, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And then the perspective shifts right at that moment up back to God and Moses. And God's like, oh, my people are not doing it correctly.
Yes.
And it's this moment where God was about to tell Moses, here's how I want you and the people to worship me. And as he's describing that to Moses, the people are down there worshiping incorrectly. So God gets mad, and that's when we see Moses appeal to God.
Yeah.
And the way all of this,
so fascinating.
Yeah. The way it all fits and ties in,
that's one of my favorite things about the Bible is, mm-hmm. I was telling someone this the other day. I'm just you have all these themes and parts of just even you could have a whole theology of faith or hope, mm-hmm. Kind of created out of some of these Old Testament stories. And you get one picture of what faith is or what hope mm-hmm. is or what some of these topics are. But then you go to the New Testament and you go to some of the different writers mm-hmm. and you get basically the exact same picture. And so it's so fascinating just seeing like the whole Bible just being weaved together into this like one perfect book, and you learn something in one part and you go back and you're like, oh, that's why this story worked out this way because of this other aspect that you then see over here. And it's just like this like constant back and forth, which is just so fascinating.
Throughout the whole Bible, aspects of God are being revealed.
Yes.
And it culminates in the person of Jesus, which we know to be the fully human. Like it's Jesus is still one aspect of a triune God.
Yeah.
And it's, man, the way it all ties together, the way that we could so seamlessly go to like Exodus, right? And still kind of be on the same topic is so cool.
So fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this is like me summarizing what we've been talking about.
Do it.
Is throughout the Old Testament, God is sharing himself. He's showing us different pictures of who he is.
Yeah.
His glory, his spirit. I mean, we've
different images. Yeah.
We've been going through the Old Testament at Anthem. So we see his presence coming down in all these different aspects. And I want to say that is God is like a relational God. He's sharing himself. He's wanting to be in relationship with humanity via all of these different forms and factors. And I think where you're heading is what's super exciting is that all of this is then like all the pieces are then joined together in Jesus. Like it's the like all of the puzzle pieces are coming together. And I just have
in a completely brand new way as well, right? It's like all the puzzle pieces are together, and then we have a different puzzle,
right?
That's finished, right? Because we've seen so many different aspects of Jesus, and then when we get to Jesus, he's born to a virgin, and he comes and he fulfills 7 billion prophecies, and is fully human yet fully God. So he introduces, while the culmination of all these other aspects that we learn about God, he's the culmination and also a brand new puzzle.
Sorry, I'm also reading through Hebrews right now, and just like this entire conversation
is
could be set in the book of Hebrews, like the first 3 chapters of just like Jesus is superior to the angels, Jesus is superior to Moses, he's superior to Joshua, just like boom, 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 boom. I'm reminded of, I want to read John 1, because I picture like all of these pieces coming together. Is like God is saying all these different aspects that humanity couldn't really handle. You're now getting in one person. Like you're getting the flesh,
John 1,
nearness.
the word was with God and the word was God.
Yes.
Right?
And then verse 14.
Why don't you read it for us though?
The word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Which is
the full glory of God that no one in the Old Testament could see without dying, came down in human form.
Right.
And we could look at him and interact with him without perishing.
Yeah. Which is insane.
Isn't it?
And then you take it another step deeper of like, okay, then that the spirit of that God who's then in this Jesus, who is all these puzzle pieces put together, is then in us.
Right.
And then we have God, this holy,
so if we were to look internally, we would die. If we get too introspective.
We are just dying from the inside out.
Well, we are, but not because of the Spirit of God in us.
Man, that pumps me up.
Dude, I know. And that's one of the reasons I also love the Bible Project is they take one theme and trace it throughout the entire Bible. And like one thing we did in school is like, he was like, pick any theme and trace it through the Bible. And we were like, well, what kind of theme? He's like, honestly, anything.
Yep.
I picked water.
I picked rocks.
I thought, did you?
Yeah.
I love that.
I did the same assignment.
I thought so heavily like, oh, water's probably not going to be that apparent. Dude, water is one of the largest themes in the entire Bible.
It's like rocks, like freaking stones show up all over the place. It's like when you actually like start to understand this idea of rocks in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and how then Jesus is the rock and Peter's the rock of the church. It's like, it all starts coming together.
And he's the living water.
Yep.
That gives us life.
Yep.
And then where do our themes interact? Where's one of the first places that they interact?
I was gonna say Jesus, but
in the Bible, where our theme interacts?
Water and rocks?
Yeah.
Creation?
Well, you could probably make a case for that. I'm thinking more like when God tells Moses to get water to the people.
Oh, by smacking a rock.
Well, no, he was supposed to command the rock.
Yes, but he smacks
and
it.
he gets angry and smacks it. Yeah, but that rock produces the life water.
Yo.
So,
I didn't know you picked that theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fun.
There was too much.
Yeah.
Because there's also like water in and of itself has multiple themes.
Mm-hmm.
There's the chaos waters.
Yep.
But then there's the life waters. Yeah. And I tried to incorporate that and it just became, my project was successful, but even the teacher was like, yeah, you had a couple different themes that you could have taken. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Dang.
Insane.
And it's just water.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any further thoughts? I feel like we've had a solid conversation about this. Obviously, we can keep going.
I know. There's no end. Yeah. I mean, we kind of did the summary, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is all the pieces coming together, pointing us towards Jesus.
If you listen to this and you have questions, you can submit them by texting us or however
whatever
you normally
pick your method of communication.
Maybe we'll develop a way. Maybe we'll create an email that they can.
Oh, for sure. I mean, technically there is an email.
Oh, really?
Yeah, BibleBros7@gmail.
Yo,
because Bible Bros was already
taken. If you heard this podcast and have additional questions.
Okay. Also, I'll close this with this thought. I never told you this, Caleb. There are other Bible Bros podcasts.
Really?
The biggest one that I found they're all pretty small. The biggest one that I found, I think, is like 100 followers or listeners.
Oh, okay.
So our goal is to become the biggest Bible Bros podcast.
Love it.
So if you're listening to this, help us in our journey of becoming the biggest Bible Bros podcast.
Spread this around. We're just a couple of guys talking about the Bible, having some fun.
Smash that like button. Be sure to hit the...
No, don't do that. Is there a like button for podcasts?
Yeah, who knows? We'll see you later.
All right. See ya.